Hey everyone, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we are talking about the world's children because their screen time, thanks to the pandemic, has increased by 500%. So with that, let's discuss the concerns and the implications of all of this. And for that, we're going to turn to an article by James Lang of NextGov. And I thought this was really fascinating. And so here we are. A recent survey of more than 3,000 parents found that screen time for their kids has increased, as I mentioned, 500% during this pandemic. Now, interestingly enough, the World Health Organization, or WHO, actually released a guideline for screen times for kids in April of 2019, over a year ago, entitled Guidelines on Physical Activity, Sedentary Behavior, and Sleep for Children Under 5 Years of Age. And obviously, this guide seems more relevant than ever, given that a lot of the planet is on lockdown. Now, in the late 1990s or so, when we really started getting the computer revolution, if you will, with screens and monitors and all of that, children between the ages of 3 and 5 years old were averaging 2.5 hours per day with their various screens. This number has gone up over the years, obviously, depending on the age group, because we have adopted a more mobile use, of technology. And so by virtue of that, phones and tablets are essentially ruling the day, not to mention the PlayStations and Xboxes and Nintendos of the world. So now, what screen time rules basically that families had put in place by virtue of just enforcing screen time for their kids essentially has been put on hold, according to this survey, since about mid-March of 2020, when pretty much we all went on lockdown. Now, this research was focused on families in the United States, but I think this is pretty much true worldwide because, again, we have mobile technology and Xboxes all over the planet. Now, the problem occurs when excessive attention to screen basically crowds out other learning and behavior. So, for example, a child watching YouTube, for example, on his or her phone when they're supposed to be, in a classroom studying or something like that, they're really not focusing on honing other skills like writing, for example, or mastering new vocabulary. So, by virtue of that, the study urges that teachers, and obviously as we are going back to school, it becomes relevant, teachers should consider how to cultivate better intention to those behaviors rather than trying to eliminate all of the distractions. We are naturally distracted by things, but the goal is to have a temporary distraction come back, focus, and hone, whereas a screen tends to draw that distraction out, and that's a very serious problem. And parents, you're not off the hook here too, because parents should not view screen times necessarily as the enemy of their children, which I found interesting. Even if parents do need to be wary of the impact of excessive screen time on things like eye health and how much sleep their kids are getting. And so by virtue of that, here is a breakdown of what our kids should be limited to and what is actually happening in real life. Now, this is coming from that WHO study. And so if your child is, let's say, 0 to 18 months, you shouldn't have any screen time whatsoever for that child. But realistically, in real life, these kids are averaging 42 minutes a day. From 18 to 24 months, they're supposed to have very limited exposure to this, assuming the parent is actually joining in and interacting with them while they're holding and playing on a tablet or whatever. They are also experiencing about 42 minutes per day, realistically. Kids 2 to 5 should have no more than an hour daily. They are right now in real life looking at 2 hours and 39 minutes per day of screen time. And then if you go from 6 years old to 18 years old, basically the guideline is that there is no specific limit on screen time that you need to be putting there, providing that screen time is not interfering with physical activity or sleep or obviously education and all of that. However, if you break down what's happening in real life, from 6 to 8 years old, our kids are getting 2 hours and 56 minutes a day. 8 to 12 is 4 hours and 44 minutes. And 13 to 18, the teenagers in our lives, are getting 7 hours and 22 minutes of screen time per day. Understand the fact that these numbers have increased by virtue of the pandemic, and studies are showing 500% increases because, quite frankly, a lot of parents have to work, and if we're working remote and the kids are home and all of that, the Nintendo becomes the babysitter, or YouTube, or whatever that is. So I think that's something that that we need to consider. Now, the question becomes then, should parents worry if their children are spending more time basically online? There you go. I mean, here's the problem. And here's the thing. The answer is no. We really shouldn't be worried as long as we don't allow the screen time, this massive increase, this 500% increase in screen time during the pandemic, we don't allow those habits to morph into a permanent screen time habit when we are all just done with this mess. Let's put it that way. And so they urge you to stick to the WHO guidelines, especially for younger children that are still forming their minds more so than, let's say, an 18-year-old. So I think it's very important. I wouldn't be afraid, per the guidelines and the studies that have been done, of this excessive screen time. Just make sure you're not making it a habit, and just make sure that the other activities, physical, education, whatever that is, and especially sleep, are prioritized over screen time. No letting Junior stay up till 1 a.m., when Junior's supposed to be getting, let's say, 8 to 10 hours a night. And I think that's pretty good. But in the meantime, if your kids are watching a ton of this, especially, let's say, if they're older, let's say 6 years old and up, that is actually going to be okay. Just make sure it's not interfering with those other things, and don't make it a habit when this lockdown and this pandemic hopefully is over sooner than later. And I thought that was really interesting. And so heads up, parents out there, this is what's going on. This is what's happening to your kids, and just be aware. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.